Eat, Sleep and Breathe Football.
Good evening mga pamangkikers and welcome to Season 3, Episode 1 of the hashtag Eat, Sleep, Breathe Football Show. My name is Jamer De La Cruz and we're very excited for tonight as our very first episode in Season 3 is going to be a big one where we're actually still remembering the heroics of our amazing Azkals squad back in 2010, and with us to revisit that wonderful night in Hanoi is the former national team coach of the Philippine Azkals, Coach Simon McMenemy. Good evening, Coach, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we really are honored to have you on our show. How are you doing so far, Coach?
Good evening. I'm doing really well. Thanks a lot for having me. It's never a pain to talk about what happened 10 years ago. It's one of the proudest moments of my life. So I'm more than happy to sit and talk about whoever wants it. In fact, people who don't even want to talk about it, I'm quite happy to talk about it to them as well. So yeah, no problem at all.
Thank you so much, Coach. So joining us as well tonight are our wonderful colleagues of the Eat, Sleep, Breathe Football Gang, Tita Saiza Cabanlong and Kent Garcia. Guys, what an honor that we do have here tonight, having Coach Simon McMenemy, the gaffer of that 2010 squad. Everybody in that group counted us out. Even we even have in our group the defending champions, the 2008 defending champions of the AFF Suzuki Cup, Vietnam, and they even have a fantastic lineup there with the likes of Lee Kong Vin still playing with them during that time. But against all odds, Philippines won 2 goals to nil thanks to Chris Greatwich and Phil Younghusband. I mean, just talking about what happened back 10 years ago gives shivers down my spine. But you know, being there on the sidelines, Coach, we just want to know first from you, how was how was the morale of the squad, knowing that you're facing the defending champions, and what could be the deciding game in your group, and possibly the deciding game as well for Philippine football. How was the morale of everyone there?
Um, the amazing thing was that you're dealing with players that hadn't really played at that level before. Not playing against defending champions in a big tournament like that. They played in tournaments, but not in the group stages. Not further on down the line. But there wasn't really any nerves. There wasn't any. We weren't particularly worried about it. There was no pressure on us. Everyone was telling us that they're going to thrash us, and it was going to be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And Vietnam had already gone in and beat Myanmar 7-1 in a previous game. So we knew they were a good team. So you can actually see on the YouTube video when the players are walking out, you look at Anton Del Rosario's face as he walks out and he takes this big kind of, and he's got this look on his face like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is incredible. And everyone's just coming off the back of that Singapore result. That was such a buzz to get that so late. To then go back to the hotel, and all of the teams stayed in the hotel. Vietnam didn't, but everyone else did. And everyone was talking about, wow, that's such a good result. You've really made it very interesting in the group. So everybody was buzzing after that. So then to go into the game against Vietnam, there really wasn't, there was a little bit of concern because there was a little bit of illness in the team. And that had an effect, especially the night before. Phil was, I've said it many times before, how Phil got through that 75 minutes, I've got no idea. Because he didn't eat a thing. He didn't have any sleep. He was having injections to try and, he had an IV to try and get food into his body. He kept throwing up right up until an hour before kickoff. He was still throwing up. And I said to him, listen, can you play? And he said, yeah, I can do it, coach. I can play. Rob was struggling. There was illness throughout the team, but there was never a point where I looked around the room and thought, oh, these guys are worried. They're nervous. They had there was no pressure on them whatsoever. And knowing what I know about pressure, I'm a more experienced coach now. Teams look very different when they go into pressured situations. Back then, those boys were in it just to do the very best they could. They believed in each other, and they just enjoyed being there. And I think that whole cocktail made it a very potent mix for Vietnam to try and beat. If anything, it was Vietnam that were the ones looking worried because they told everyone they were going to beat us, and they couldn't.
Yeah, that was a solid backline, if I may say, during that time when you faced Vietnam. I mean, there were a lot of chances that Vietnam has threw in front of Neil Etheridge and even our backline out there, but we held strong, and that gave us the clean sheet on that day, and even gave us the win. After the match, how did it felt for you personally that knowing that the underdogs, the Philippines, like people within the region says that Philippines is just a stat sheet stuffer for others, for other nations,
Mm.
that they're just gonna fill in the void when it comes to the goal differences. How did it feel for you personally, knowing that you've won the match, and not only you've won the match, but you've won the hearts, not only of the Filipino people, but everyone in Southeast Asia?
I think directly after the match, there was just an air of disbelief. There was an air of, did we really just do that? It wasn't. I don't think it really sunk in for a few days. It was actually my birthday on the 6th. So on the 5th, we had the game. And then the next morning, when we all woke up for breakfast, you can imagine the mood at breakfast the next morning. Everyone's bouncing off the ceilings. And it was my breakfast. It was my birthday. And they brought a cake out and everyone was singing and having a great time at breakfast that morning. But I still don't think we really understood just how historic that would come to be, and the effect that would have on the whole country. I mean, it's at the end of the day, you go into that game just wanting to win. You try and plan to win. You do what you can. You don't ever think that a performance is going to affect the country in a way that it had. You only start to realize that when you see things changing a couple of weeks, and then a month later, a couple of months down the road, and all of a sudden, the UFL are getting the things together. Everyone's on television. You don't really understand the gravity of the situation. It's just sheer amazement and almost a bit of shock. Um, but it was still about one more game. We put ourselves into a great position, and we'd not got beaten by Singapore or Vietnam, but we still had to. It would have been a real shame to then get beaten by Myanmar. And even if we'd have come away with just getting beaten by Myanmar, people would still be, well, it was the Philippines. Myanmar are a better team than the Philippines. So it was still another game that we had to navigate. We still had to get through that game. So there was an air of disbelief. There was an air of happiness. There was a little bit of shock. But I still think underneath that, there was still an understanding that this means nothing if we can't then go and, get a result against Myanmar. It makes the Myanmar result even more important. And it's a lot harder when you're then expecting a result, when you have to go for a result. When you're not expecting anything, magic happens. That's what all the great giant killers in the world will tell you, that you need that bit of luck and low expectation, and all of a sudden magic happens. But when you actually need a result, that's a very, very different approach. So it was professional, but it was hugely enjoyable. It was a really nice place to be in that squad at that time.
Thank you so much for that wonderful answer, Coach, and also belated happy birthday to you. I mean, uh,
Thank you.
that was that for me. If I was in your position, that was probably the best birthday gift that I could ever get. Winning,
100%.
yeah, winning against Vietnam or against the champion a night before your birthday. That really means a lot. Now, I just want to go over to my colleague here, Sai. Um, I mean, this is going to be about what happened next after after you won against Vietnam and after you sealed the result against Myanmar. Sai, go ahead.
Yes. Good evening, Coach. I only have one question
No
to ask
problem.
you, but I hope this isn't a tough question to answer. Coach, if one of the Suzuki Cup semi game was played in the Philippines instead of playing both games in Indonesia, do you think it would have turned things around for the team and you eventually leading us to the finals?
um, I'll give you the answer that that the head coach of Indonesia told me after the games, in that he was really, really pushing for Philippines to hold the game in Manila because he was incredibly scared of coming up against us. There was a lot of pressure on the Indonesian head coach to just thrash us. We're playing in Jakarta, we're playing in the Bung Karno, and I know full well now that that is a very, very intimidating place to go. And there is a huge amount of expectation on Indonesia to win every time they play at home. So he wanted the game away. He wanted us to play in Manila, where there was a little bit more pressure on us to try and come out and win the game instead of sit deep and defend. He was worried that they couldn't beat us. He was worried that we were just going to defend, and they didn't have a. If Vietnam couldn't do it, then the last thing he wanted was for us to do the same thing to them in their home stadium in front of 90,000. So he was really worried about that going into the game, and he was really disappointed that he had to play 2 games. I mean, it's a ridiculous statement because that gives them. I mean, really, it should give them the edge. But he was really disappointed that he had to play twice in Indonesia without actually going to Manila. He thought that we would come out a little bit more and give them more of a chance to score. In terms of myself, my biggest disappointment being the head coach of the Philippines national team was never playing a game at home. I never had that luxury. I never enjoyed that, which was a real shame for me. But it's really difficult to put into words those 2 semi-final appearances. And given the run that we'd been on, given the opposition, the stadium, the fans, everything it was a chance to sample that atmosphere twice. I mean, you're lucky to do it once, but then to get it again straight away afterwards, it was like a drug. You know, you needed it again. That was incredible. That blew my mind. Let's go and do it again. And I think if the players are honest, they'll tell you the same thing. They loved the atmosphere the first time. They wanted to go and experience it the second, because they might not ever get another chance to. So would it have changed the result? I don't know. Possibly, maybe. Would it have been a good thing for us to go on and win the Suzuki Cup? It would have been great, but what would it actually have done? Highlight a lot of problems, caused a lot of infighting, patting ourselves on the back, thinking we're good enough now. I think it kind of whet the appetite for for Philippines. No, we still have steps to make. Look what we did with this much. If we can put a little bit more in, where can we go from here? And that's proven to be the case. If we'd have won it, would we have had the same efforts? Because we've already kind of done it. Would everyone be just patting themselves on the back saying, good job, you know? So I think the way it panned out, it panned out perfectly in terms of the experiences, how we played, where we played. It was every single member of that squad, from Chiefy through to Phil, will tell you it's one of the greatest experiences of their lives, me included. And I would be very, very lucky to get anywhere near that sort of level again, you know, in that stadium, in that environment, with that team. And it was life-changing, and I got to do it twice. So I'm very thankful for it.
Thank you, Coach. Now I'll turn you over to Ken for his round of questions for you.
Yes, Simon, good evening. Again, it's a pleasure to have you here. Such a very
Ken.
um, it's like personally and as a fan. There was this specific moment in the match where
Ken, we're losing you.
Ken, you're frozen, buddy. I can't hear you, and it sounds like it's
I'm
going to be a
just
good question.
Ken, we're losing
everything.
you. Your
Hello?
internet is you're frozen as of the moment.
Wait, one moment.
Okay, maybe you can just share me your question on our group chat if ever you're experiencing technical difficulties, so that you know.
Sure,
All right.
sure.
Yeah, but going back, by the way, with what you said regarding the experience that you had in the Bongkarno, playing twice, facing Indonesia nonetheless. I, I don't think we've ever heard. I don't think we've ever heard a story regarding our games in Bongkarno, knowing that even the coach of Indonesia was pushing for a home game for the Philippines. I mean, everyone here in the country, we were just happy to see the Philippines playing in the AFF Suzuki Cup, let alone seeing them in Fox Sports, ESPN, or any sports broadcasting platform. Because before 2010, or even before the win against Vietnam, I don't think anybody in the country knows that a Philippine football or national team for the Philippines does exist. So
Yeah.
after that win, it clearly put the Philippines not only on the map when it comes to Southeast Asian football, but in terms of at least local awareness. So had we actually got the opportunity to play one of the games, or at least one of the semifinal match in the Philippines, that could have boosted the let's say the viewership or the following of Philippine football, like in an instant, because there's still the momentum of the win against Vietnam and the result against Myanmar, and knowing that the Philippines is playing in the semifinal. So it's kind of a shame that we weren't able to see that, or we weren't able to get that opportunity.
Mm.
But it's also something that gives us a better idea of what really happened, or how does the coach of Indonesia thought about it. I mean, at least we know that they're still scared, because
Oh, they
maybe.
were. They were
Yeah.
really scared. And I know that they sent guys down to watch our training because we had to train on the two pitches that are right next to Bung Karno. I know them very well now because I've trained there myself with the national team of Indonesia. So I know that they sent guys down to watch our training. I had a really good relationship with the Indonesian coach.
Mhm.
Alfred was a really nice guy, and sadly he passed recently back home in Austria. But um, I remember talking to him in the hotel. I think it was after the game, after the first game. I think there was a press conference, and we were talking afterwards. And he was very respectful. He was the very first coach that showed a lot of respect to the Philippines. Radi with Singapore didn't show a lot of respect up until the game, up until the end of our game with Singapore. When the final whistle went, that's when he showed respect. He was a very classy guy after that. Up until that point, all the post-game conferences, sorry, all the pre-game conferences were just Vietnam coach Kalisto sitting here and Radi Avramovic sitting here, me and the Myanmar guy in the middle, and they're just going back and forwards about how much they're going to beat both of us. So we didn't get any questions. No one asked me anything. It was just all about these guys here, and they were just, well, the first thing Kalisto said was, it's going to be very important how many goals we score against the Philippines. And I just kind of looked at him, you arrogant bugger. How dare you say something like that? I'm sitting next to you. At least say it when I'm not there, not when I'm sitting next to you. And that pissed me off. I went back and told the players everything. I told them exactly what he said. The first time he spoke, he said it's going to be important how many goals, not if we win. It's going to be important how many goals we score against the Philippines. So that was, amongst coaches, I was at a level I'd not worked at before. So I was just kind of going with the flow. I didn't really know what to expect. But that really pissed me off. And Radi was quite dismissive of us pre-game, and then once we scored against Singapore, once Chris got that goal in the 94th minute, and the final whistle went, Radi came over and he put his arm around me and he said, "You make it very difficult for us." But was very was very positive about our team. Said some really nice things. He said, "You have a really difficult team to beat there." But then when Alfred, someone as respected as Alfred, is saying, we were very scared of playing you guys. We didn't know how to break you down. All the pressure was on us. You guys can just come in and play. You don't have to win. You don't, no one's expecting anything. I know that he was incredibly scared of playing against us. And you know what happened with Callisto. I've never heard from him since. But not shaking hands after a game is something that, that's pathetic. Someone of that level should not be doing that. So this is what you dealt with, coach to coach, and it really is a true indicator of who gets it, the respect levels, who shows you respect, who doesn't. And it was only once we proved ourselves that we started getting a bit of respect. But it was an amazing time, and I get what you're saying about the game not being played in the Philippines. It would have been lovely to have a semi-final in the Philippines, but would we have had a surface? Would we have had a pitch good enough for that level? There was discussion that we would have had a stadium, but one of the things that I had to deal with as a coach in run up to those semi-finals, you're saying that back in the Philippines, you didn't hear too much or you didn't know too much about what was going on in the run up to that semi-final in Indonesia. When we came out to that game, the first semi-final, we still had two presidents. We had Mary Martinez and we had Mr. Araneta, who's there now. They were both in the hotel lobby as the players are coming out. So I've been asked to go and speak to Mary Martinez, and then I was asked to go and speak to Araneta. Now, as the head coach preparing for a game, and all of a sudden I'm being drawn into this political battle between two individuals, both claiming to be Philippines president, I just walked straight through the middle and blanked them both and went off with the team. Didn't sit down with either of them, especially not Mary Martinez. But at the end of the day, he was the guy responsible for hiring me. So I showed respect, but I just said, listen, I'm really sorry. I'm concentrating on the game. I can't. But this was a lot of the backlog that was going on. This was one of the backstories that went on through that whole campaign, really, was this constant tugging of what was going on with the federation. And some people claiming credit, Mary Martinez saying that he wanted to ditch the whole team and bring in a new team after the point against Singapore. There was a lot of backstories that went on during those times. But I get what you mean about one of the games in the Philippines. I guess for fans and supporters, it would have been nice. But I genuinely think how it played out perfectly. And I wouldn't... We lost both games, okay. But I don't think I'd have want it changed. If I knew what I knew now, I'd still want those two games, both those games played in Indonesia.
Well, thank you so much for that, Coach. Before I proceed with our friend here, Kent, let me just admit, or let me just accept one of the other members of our panel,
Sure.
Johnny Pampa. He's actually in Italy right now, and he's just finished his lunch. Yeah, there he is. Johnny, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So yeah, I mean, Coach Simon, we were just talking about that win against Vietnam, but more importantly, the semifinals of the AFF Suzuki Cup. If you remember, we played twice in Bongkarno, and here's an interesting fact that he said. The coach of Indonesia that time, he's almost begging for at least one of the games to be played in the Philippines, knowing that there's a lot of pressure that he has in terms of making sure that Indonesia wins against the Philippines. So, I mean, that's, I think, for me, that's the first time that I heard that story. That's the first time that I heard that they're really scared of us to the point that, hey, at least if you have a pitch ready out there, please, let's play a game out there. Just easing up the pressure on us a little bit.
Actually, it surprised me also to
Yeah.
hear it straight from Coach Simon that the late Alfred Riddle really wanted to play in Manila.
Yeah. Well, he's a smart guy, and he's been around the block a few times. And what I always liked about Alfred, he was very straight. He would always tell you directly. There was no messing around, no crap. That's why he actually got on very well in Indonesia and did well, and they respected him because he didn't bow to anyone. So, he wasn't making things up. He wasn't. Callisto didn't watch us against Singapore. He didn't bother. He just assumed he was going to smash us. So when we played the game, they didn't have a different way of playing. It was the same way for 90 minutes. They didn't change styles, change shape, formation, nothing. They just did the same thing for 90 minutes and couldn't break us down. But Alfred watched the games. He watched all the games and analysed them. So then by the time it came for Indonesia to play us, he was scared they couldn't beat us. He was scared, how are we going to break them down? They don't move. They don't allow space. They're incredibly physical, and they've got Neil Etheridge in goal and Phil Young has been up front. One chance and we'll score. So he was genuinely worried going into those games. He was really disappointed that the game wasn't in Manila because, like we were saying, in Manila, the emphasis would have been on us really to go and win the game. It almost would have been, the away team that sits in a little bit and defends a bit more. So he was disappointed that he had to play twice in Jakarta. He was very concerned that they couldn't pull it off against us. And even afterwards, he was saying, you guys played so well. I think the two goals were really quite lucky. There wasn't a lot of chances in those games. Yeah. And there was the two games, I think the first goal, there was a mix-up between Neil and Ray. They both shout for it and they both leave it. Mm-hmm. And then Gonzalez goes around the back and heads it in from a tight angle. On another day, in a more quiet stadium, Neil just comes and catches that. or Ray flicks it away for a corner. It's not a problem. But in that stadium, you know, I was trying to shout to Brax and the guys on the bench, and they couldn't hear me. I was standing 2 meters in front of them, and I'm screaming my lungs off trying to communicate. They couldn't hear me. The noise in that stadium, I genuinely have said that so many times. The noise in that stadium caused that goal against us, and really that was it. Other than that, they didn't cause us too many problems. Neil wasn't making as many saves as he was against Vietnam. And the second game where Gonzalez scored from outside the box, it's a great finish, but he's lucky to get the ball back. He shoots and it hits Rob's shin. Could have gone anywhere, but it goes straight back to him, falls perfectly into his stride, and he smashes it in the top corner. That first shot could have missed Rob and gone straight through to Neil, and Neil just picks it up off the floor. So there was a little bit of luck, and I think Alfred was gracious enough to realise that. He said, you know, they got a little bit lucky, but he showed a huge amount of respect, and I came away from that competition friends with Alfred, and when I came back to Indonesia, you know, we met up and had coffee and talked again about those games. So he was the one that showed the most respect, and I've stayed friends with Raddy ever since. So those two guys, the other two, they didn't really show any respect whatsoever.
Yeah, well, that's a great thing to hear. You, Johnny. Before we go to Kent, let me just get your composure out there, Kent. Johnny, wanna go ahead and throw in your questions?
Yeah, sure.
No?
Because you know, it's a lot. You know, a difference between the Philippines and Indonesian, you know, ambiance or environment. Because when you were with the national team with us, you may had pressure, but not as much as the one in Indonesia. Because Indonesia being a football country, do you think that you got more pressure when you got the job with the Indonesian team?
Oh, I mean, it's other end of the scale. Philippines, no pressure whatsoever. I was told to just help us get through qualifying, not qualify, just take us through qualifying. Whatever happens. That was it. There was no expectation whatsoever. So that was a really nice. I've never had that situation before with a boss, and I've never had it since in the last 10 years. There's always been expectation. But to then step in as national team head coach of Indonesia, you know, you've got 247 million people who all think they know football, and will all go on social media and tell you what you've done wrong and you should have made this sub and that sub. And I think that's why it's such a poison chalice. I think that's why Indonesia doesn't achieve what really they should achieve with the numbers and the talent they have. Vastly different to the Philippines. You know, Philippines very much a new, how do we say, a new country at this level. You know, very much a new face in amongst old stages that have been here a long time, battling it out. The Philippines are now in there mixing it with these guys. With Indonesia, they're just constant underperformers and have been for a long, long time. Vietnam are starting to get their act together. They're the strongest team in the area. Thailand have been good for some time, but Indonesia haven't been able to reach the heights, and it's because of that pressure, that interest in the game, that passion for the game, but also, you know, at the higher levels, the politics, the business, the money, the power, the influence. It's a very, very different game in Indonesia than it is in the Philippines. It's still very new and very, you know, you're still probably 20, 30 years off the politics and the dodgy things that go on in football. Here, they happen every day, and it's a very, very different environment. Very different. Two different jobs.
Yeah, because you were saying that they were underperforming. Because my follow-up question is also a thing that you just mentioned right now. Because the Liga Indonesia is currently suspended because due to COVID. And since there's no league games, is it gonna even add even more pressure to the national team, since they haven't even touched the ball for, I don't know, for God knows how many months? So will that also be a huge factor, especially when it comes to the Indonesian national team?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know what they're going to do now. There was rumors that they were going to try and pull out of World Cup qualifying. There was the league hasn't played since, I think, 3 games of the season started back in March time. They played 3 games before it was suspended, and then it was supposed to come back in October. But 2 days before the league was supposed to start, the police said, no, we're not having games. Why they didn't talk to the police months before that, I don't know. Then it was supposed to start in November, didn't start in November. Now it's been cancelled and will start again in February. And they're talking about playing a small kind of 3-4 week tournament, much like the Philippines did in a kind of bubble to kind of work out the winner. But then that has to be done by a certain time to then allow the new season to start in 2021 as well. So I haven't got a clue what they're going to do. A short answer. And that is massively going to have an effect on the World Cup qualifying games that they still have to play, which are due to be played early 2021. Thailand, Vietnam, Thailand have played their currently still playing their league. Malaysia playing, they've been training, they haven't got too many issues. Vietnam the same. Indonesia, the only ones who haven't really got their act together and worked out how to play some type of football in a bubble or some type of... It's always the same. And this is why they just keep getting weighted down. They can't quite get their players to perform at the highest level because they just can't work out the organisation. It's such a shame, but yeah, it will be a massive, massive disadvantage when they go into these World Cup games. And even if they pull out, I get sacked for not winning World Cup qualifying games. COVID happens. They come out the back of COVID and go, well, the World Cup didn't matter anyway. We'll just don't do it. So I lose the job, but then they're going to pull out of. That's probably what's going to happen. So yeah, it's you just have to swallow it and move on. That's just how things are. That's the job, unfortunately.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, mostly some of the football crazy countries, like obviously like Indonesia and others, sometimes they have this, sadly to say, toxic kind of mentality. It's like they give you they blame you. Sorry, it happens. They blame you, and the next thing you know, they just realize, oh, this World Cup doesn't even matter. So you as a coach, you're like, you're shaking your head. You're like, huh?
Yeah.
Like,
why the expectation in the first place if you're just going to pull out the competition? What did you think you're going to win the World Cup? It doesn't work like that. There's a sense of nonsense about the amount of belief they have in their national team. They don't want to take in any of the technical factors as to why that team isn't performing. All they want to do is sign another coach. And if he's crap, we get rid of him and bring in another coach. And he's no good. So there is a culture of blame. There needs to be reasons why a team doesn't win. It's not good enough that the team was better. The other team the opponents were better, or, there has to be a reason. And unfortunately, when there is so many bad stories and so much corruption and issues and politics and problems, people just assume that that's it. People assume that it's all the bad stuff in football that's causing it. They don't want to look at the technical reasons. The national team the boys were coming into training in the middle of the season, and they weren't stopping league games while we were playing World Cup qualifiers. They were still playing league games. So I had guys coming into the squad like 2-3 days before the World Cup qualifier with Malaysia. Apparently one of the biggest games that they've played in a long time, that we have to win, that's hugely important. Yet teams aren't releasing their players until 2-3 days before the game. And they played 2 or 3 days before Malaysia for their club teams. But then the bosses of those teams are turning around and putting pressure on me to win the game. Now, hang on a second. That doesn't really make sense. But what can I do? I can't fight that. That's just how things happen. And, as a national team head coach of Indonesia, after being here for as long as I have, that's going to be the case if things don't go your way. You can't then turn around and moan about it. I knew what I was doing when I put my name on the contract. So sometimes that's just how it turns out. And you don't know that's going to be the case when you step up. You have to have the bravery to do it in the first place. But there is a lot of things working in this part of the world. There is a lot of things that you are held responsible for, but you have no say over whatsoever. They're just assigned to you. That's just your problem. You can't do anything about it, but that is your problem and you will get blamed. It's part of the job and there's nothing you can do about it.
Okay. Yeah. And last question,
Sure.
before I pass it on. Let's go back. Let's go back to our country. Let's not focus so
Let's
much.
not talk about Indonesia.
Let's go back
Bad
to
times.
let's go back to the Philippines. Ever since 2010, I admit I started following Philippine football at 2010 after that miraculous event that you were part of. Obviously, that's why we're here in the first place. But
Sure.
through time and everything, man, like for example, the 2020 season, even though it was 6 teams and like that, like what did you think of it? Because we were the only like ASEAN country that had the league going on and everything. So what are your thoughts on the efforts of like the PFF, Coco Torre, and everybody that has organized the league this season?
I feel for them. I genuinely feel for them, because I have to then. I do stuff. I work for Fox Sports now, so I go on and I'm a pundit on Fox Sports, and I talk about Ceres and how well they've done, and they've made the group finals and won the group, the zone, Southeast Asia zone. But I feel for the guys that are still battling away and still putting money in, and still trying to do everything they can, because it doesn't feel like they get a huge amount of support from outside. There is a certain few people who are really trying to push the sport forward, and hook or by crook, they managed to get a tournament on. Outsiders looking at that, look at the Philippines league and go, what's that, 6, 7, 8 teams in 3 weeks? That's the league, is it? This is the real domestic league here. This is professional. These guys are getting paid. They don't, there's not a huge amount of credibility there. But knowing what I know about Philippines, I know how hard that is to do what they've done. So there's a huge amount of praise that is due. But it's just such a shame that guys like Moralco pull out. They were pushing the team forward. The team was one of the better teams in the league. We weren't quite at Ceres' level of input, but why pull out? They're still around. They're still charging a lot of people for electricity in the Philippines. I don't believe they're out of money, that's for sure. So why pull out of such a sport that is growing and was slowly getting bigger and better? Why? How is that ever going to push sport forward? How is it ever going to create opportunity? How is it ever going to influence young people? How is it ever going to give your brand a good name if when it starts getting difficult, you pull out? Well, players don't do that. No one else does that. Why do big brands not put their money in their, put their hand in their pocket and support a sport which is obviously liked? It's just such a shame. And to watch the UFL decline and then the PFL come back, and it's really sad, because I know that in order for Ceres to be successful, they're going to get a Champions League spot this next event. That's an incredible achievement, to be in amongst the big boys of Asia, to be considered one of the best teams in Asia now, not Southeast Asia, one of the best teams in Asia. And with greatest respect to everyone they play against, look at who they're playing against domestically. How can they go up against Beijing, Ulsan, any of these big boys? And the run up to those games, they're playing against, again, with the greatest of respect, Mendiola, youth players from the Azkals. Even with the greatest of respect, Kaya, that it's incredible that Kaya have kept going so long as they have. I mean, genuinely incredible. But what if everyone was given surplus amount of money from a sponsor, and then they were able to go out and build teams and build the league? Ceres would have a much better chance of flying the flag in Asia, in this Champions League. It's really difficult, because you want them to break through at the top, but you have to support them from the bottom. You can't just expect them to do it on their own, and you can't just expect one guy to keep putting his hand in his pocket. No wonder he sold the club. He just gets to a point where he looks around and he sees who else is doing it, and he realizes he's the only one. Why would you keep doing it? Fair play to him, but it's. I can appreciate the effort it takes. I really can, but I just wish more people would put their hand in their pocket or step up, because just sitting back and watching and going, oh, well done, it's not good enough. People need to get up and do something.
I mean, exactly. Because the thing is, I've been saying this also when the UCFC, United City FC, just won the league, and then we said that they will be the first Filipino club to represent us, the country, in the biggest club tournament in Asia. Oh. And like you said, Coach, they're gonna face, aside from the usual Kobe Vise with Andres Iniesta versus Shanghai versus the greats, and
yep,
and and the fact that you made the point, I never thought of it, is like, yes, you're gonna face like the big clubs. The big clubs are gonna go to the Philippines. It's gonna give more recognition for football and all, but at the same time, like, leading up to it, like you said, with all respect to the clubs,
How are you going to prepare for those games?
Exactly.
exactly. And I can also see Kent smiling when you said that you were sad that Meralco isn't there anymore. But anyways, yeah. But don't worry, they'll be back, coach.
I
Not
hope
the
so.
Meralco, but the Loyola will be back. That's
I
for
hope
sure.
so. I hope so.
So yeah, thank you very much, coach. I'll
You're welcome,
bring it
pal.
back
No problem.
to Tito J.
Thank you so much, Johnny. Now, talking about someone who really loves Loyola, or let's say Morocco. Let's go to Kent. You left us hanging with that
Am I
question that
okay
you
now?
do have.
Hello?
I think your connection is good now. So yeah, go ahead.
Coach, again, good evening. And the first question I have is about the first goal in that match against Vietnam. It was like after the moment, like Vietnam threw everything at you, including the kitchen sink. Neil was able to hold on and the defense, and then suddenly a cross came in from the right side, and then all of a sudden, Chris Greatwich's head was just on the ball, and then it suddenly went into the disbelief of the whole uh, Vietnamese crowd here in Hanoi.
Mm.
Could you talk us through that moment? Or it's like, were you shocked about that play, or what was going on through your mind, going through the motions?
The thing about having the players we had was that when you have someone like Phil Younghusband up front, you always have a chance of scoring a goal. Because his return on chances, he's not a striker that needs 10 chances to score a goal. He's a striker that needs possibly one or two, and he will score. With all the attention that he was getting, it kind of freed up others. And Chris, to have someone like Chris, who's experienced, understood the team, had been playing against some of these teams for a while, but the experience that he brung, everyone focused on trying to stop Phil, which then allowed others to get forward. And Chris was great at the Frank Lampard role of just getting into the box late. Everyone's already in there waiting for the cross, and then Chris arrives. He was really good at doing that. But he also had a habit of just scoring really important goals. He doesn't score many, but when he does, he pops up and he makes them count. And when that goal went in the back of the net, we'd always hoped that if we could stay tight, we had a belief that we could hit them on the counter attack. And like I say, when you've got someone like Phil up front, you want to play off that. So we had a feeling we could score. We knew we wouldn't get many chances. We knew that it would be 2 or 3 chances at most to score. And even in that game, we hit the post in the first 15, 20 minutes before that goal went in. Ian hits one off the post. So I just had this good feeling about that game, and to watch it go in, I didn't think it was going in because it came off his head, ear, shoulder, and then somehow trickled past the keeper. I think the keeper thought it was going wide and didn't really dive, and then went, oh no, it's going in, and then dived too late, and it had already in the back of the net. It was a strange kind of goal, but how important that proved to be. And I even remember the commentator watching the game. I've watched that game so many times. The commentator saying, how bizarre Philippines have taken the leads. It was at the time. It was kind of, as a coach, to put out a game plan that we're going to defend a lot, we'll get a few chances, and hopefully we take a chance. For it to actually happen, it doesn't happen that often. You always hope it does. That's what you plan for as a coach. But to actually see it happen in front of you was just, it was fantastic. It was fantastic to watch, and to watch the players celebrate. If that was all we got out of the game, if then Vietnam went on to score more goals, listen, we took it to them. We got the first goal. We went as hard as we could, and that's what happened. But to see that moment where, everyone was just celebrating crazy was amazing. But then it almost defied belief that they were able to just put that to bed. Yeah, we've done that. Let's go back to 0-0 and let's try and get another goal. And that's kind of the mentality they took. They just, every time they scored, they forgot they scored. That doesn't happen often. Normally, teams start getting scared and worried and start making mistakes, and the other team dominates. It didn't happen with us. We just stuck to the game plan. We just kept going. And I think that's credit to the experience we had in that team. But yeah, it was kind of surreal. And then when the second one went in, it was just, I don't know, I kind of lost the plot. I think I was on the pitch at one point running around, and yeah, it was all Dan Palami's in front of the camera like that, giving it the Philippines, and it was all going off at that point. We genuinely believe we might actually get something out of this. Yeah, great times, great times. It seemed to go past in a flash, but then the memory of it lasts forever. So
Yeah.
incredible times.
But before you got to that match with Vietnam, you had a very good qualifying campaign.
Yeah.
I watched one match there, the one where you came back from two down against Laos, if I'm not mistaken. That was one heck of a match as well.
Yeah.
Um, can you talk us through that match as well? And question after that is, after that draw where you seem to defy all odds to draw against a Laos team who's very potent in attack back then. They're very good in attack. That
Mhm.
was that the point where you think that this team will be going far, this team will be going deep.
I'll answer that question first. No, I didn't think that once we had to change the style of play, because the style of play we had in those qualifiers was to go and press and to play high up the pitch and not sit and defend. We didn't sit and defend against those teams. We went after them because we made the decision that we were better than a lot of the teams we were qualifying against. We kind of thought, listen, we're better than Cambodia. This isn't higher level Southeast Asia. This is mid level. We can handle this. And the coach before me, Des Pulpin, had done a lot of work on pressing. So I didn't want to change too much in such a short space of time. So I wanted to kind of follow on from the coach as best I could. So we continued to do the things that Des Bulpin had done and press and try and make defenders make mistakes. I didn't think that at that point we were good enough to be able to build up out the back and play nice attacking football. But I knew that if we worked hard enough and pressed Cambodian defenders, Lao defenders, guys who weren't as established in good leagues around Southeast Asia, they might just give us the ball back, in dangerous areas if we could press them. So throughout that campaign of qualifying, we pressed, we went high, we didn't sit deep at all. We didn't sit on our back line like we did against Singapore and Vietnam. So once we got through those games, we then had to change the style of play because we knew, listen, we can't do this. We're going to get ripped apart by teams that we're not at the stage where we're comfortable enough to press. It's a difficult thing to do. So we're going to have to change. But that game against Laos, I think if you're talking about important goals, and I know that Chris has mentioned this a lot in podcasts that he's done, the goal that Jimmy scored against Laos in the 94th minute to give us the 2-2 is probably the most important goal that the Philippines national team have ever scored. Probably. Because without that goal, we wouldn't have qualified. And in which case, we probably wouldn't be sitting here talking. I'd have just been another coach that came in, helped a bit, and then went away. So the fact that we got that goal in the 94th minute, and it was literally Neil smashed it from one end of the pitch to the other, and it landed on the penalty spot, and Jimmy was taller than everyone and just did that. To this day, the head coach of Laos still thinks that his keeper threw the game. He thinks there was something not right about that. Because he said that goalkeeper is very good, but if you watch the game, he kind of comes and stops. He doesn't jump. And Jimmy has a really easy one. Jimmy's taller than everybody, so he just flicked it back and it went in the net in the 94th minute. So I know David Booth very well, and we've spoke a lot about it. And he thinks something not right there with the goalkeeper. Something was, he was asking questions of his goalkeeper why he did what he did. He didn't come out and clear it or whatever. But had that ball not gone in the back of the net, we wouldn't, never mind Vietnam, never mind, history wouldn't have changed. We might not have had a professional league. The consequences would be endless. That for me was probably the most underrated goal and the most important goal that Philippines have ever scored in terms of where they are now. We wouldn't have got the opportunity to go through, but it was on goal difference by like one goal over Cambodia. And then we go on to draw with Singapore and beat Vietnam. It doesn't make sense. There's no common sense to that run. It doesn't correlate, but that's what happened. So there we are.
Yeah, that's what Sir Alex Ferguson says a lot of football bloody hell. I think that's it's a bit of luck really every time we play, well. And my last question would be what do you think that the current Philippine squad, well, we know that we're doing a transition to a younger generation of players. Um, Unlike those who took the responsibilities about good 10 years, 8 years, 9 years ago, what do you think should these younger generation of players emulate from the 2010 team that you coached? What mentality?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's not about technique, and it's not about performances, and it's not about formations, tactics. It's not about that. It's about understanding what it's taken for you to get the opportunity to put that Azkal shirt on, and even to be called Azkals. What did it take? What what did a group of individuals have to do to be able to get to that point? That's what it's all about. It's not about what the coach says or how he plays. That's his job. He's going to go out and do that. And if Scott doesn't do it, someone else will do it. But it's about, you know, the badge that your colleague here is wearing on camera. What did it take for that badge to be seen as one of the best in Southeast Asia? And what did those boys perform? Or how did they do that? You know, that should all be taken into account. If they can understand that, they're going to go onto the pitch so motivated they'll smash anyone they play against. But if they can understand that without political involvement, without personal involvement or anything like that, that's where the team goes. That's how you motivate that team. Show them the video.
Well, I
So
hope
much
those
goosebumps.
younger
Right
players
in the
would,
feels.
yeah, I hope those younger players would watch this right now, and what Coach Simon said really hit the nail on the coffin.
Yeah.
That's all from my end, Coach Simon. Thanks.
You're welcome,
Yeah.
pal. You're welcome.
Whatever he just said about what needs to be done or whatever should have been done after the miracle in Hanoi. I mean, I could go on and ask you this question from our colleague about
Go on.
what would you change or what would you do differently to yield the results that we weren't able to get over the last 10 years. But clearly it just points out to the mentality or to what you were saying earlier, that if they don't know what really is the impact that they're gonna make with the badge that we do have in our shirts, I don't think we're gonna get to somewhere. But yeah, just to at least get that question answered from our colleague Glenn, who's unfortunately is not gonna be able to join us. He said here that our recent breakthrough in the AFC Cup and the is one of the legacies attributed to the initial success that you have brought in 2010. But after coming short of yielding results, would you have done anything differently, tactically wise, and probably managerial wise?
No, not a thing. Not a thing. You know, I'm proud to the point where I get emotional talking about it, because that doesn't happen. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen that a team of the Philippines can do what they did with the greatest of respect, the players they had, playing in a domestic league that wasn't really even professional at the time, with the performances they had in run up to that, and a squad that was just pulled together, and a coach who really didn't know what he was doing. First time coach at that level with 6 weeks, 7 weeks preparation. Shouldn't happen. Really doesn't. But this is why we love football, because it does happen. And those are the things that just kind of hook into you and make you a fan. And you're like, this is why we eat, sleep, and breathe football, because these things do happen. It's not always about, this is what it's about. It's exactly what it's about, because everyone on the screen now gets it. It's not about money, power, politics. It's about going out there, putting the shirt on and performing and knowing who's supporting you. And, I think I'm a lot better coach than I was back in 2010. I'm a lot better coach now. I understand a lot more. I've got a lot more experience. I've worked at different levels. I can talk about football in different countries and different whatever. Do I think I was a good coach in 2010? Average. I knew football. Was I the reason that those boys got that result? No. But what I was able to do is pull a group of guys together and create an environment off the pitch that put them in such a motivated mood that they'd go out there and change the world. They'd go out there and battle against the best players in the region and beat them. And they'd go 1-on-1, they'd go 2-on-1. Rob Gear made how many game-saving tackles? Every couple of minutes, he's making a game-saving tackle throughout the whole of that campaign. Neil's making saves without even opening his eyes. They're just smashing the ball off him and they can't get it past him. You've got guys like Hinair, who's playing out of position against Vietnam, and they still can't beat him. He doesn't even know the position he's playing, yet he's still motivated enough to not get beat. And this is what it's about. This is what a lot of coaches that I find tend to forget. They just think it's about tactics. For me, the higher you go, the less it's about tactics, because you're working with good players. You're not teaching them anything. You're not reinventing the wheel. But if you can't motivate a group of players, if you can't build a team and a squad that want to go out and perform, you're going to get beat. And in a short space of time, I think that's what we were able to do. We were able to build a family that no one in this area could beat.
Mhm. Wow. I mean, with Coach using the tagline of the show,
You
just
like
to
that, did you?
just to
Oh,
explain
mate, you have no idea. I'm
that
buzzing.
that made our entire lives, or probably that made our season 3 really memorable. That makes it really memorable for us, knowing that someone who helped the Philippines start everything that we are experiencing right now. I mean, we, like what you've said, we wouldn't be here talking about the memories of 2010, talking about what the future holds for the Philippines, what's been done over the last 10 years, if not for those games back in 2010, and if not for the contributions that you have put in to our national team, because that's where the Philippines initially got the traction when it comes to Philippine football. I mean, like what we have mentioned, probably the last time the Philippines knew about having a national team was in 2005 SEA Games back in Bacolod. But that's basically it, because Bacolod or Visayas, they're basically a football region here in the country. They know their football. They know they talk a lot about football, but everywhere else in the country, I don't think
And Sea
they do
Games is under
recognize that.
23. That's not even senior team. Sea
Yeah.
Games is under 23. So yeah,
So
that's how it is.
I think we were blessed to have that kind of insights from Coach Simon. It's like after hearing that, I'm ready to run through a brick wall.
Mate,
head on,
mate, you're
head
like
on
Oh, mate.
straight to the wall.
wait, like mate, you're like Brian Clough of the Philippines, man.
I'm not so sure about that, because Brian Clough knew what he was talking about.
No,
I
mate,
think
but
one
you
thing
you
I've
still
always been
did.
able to do, one thing I've always been able to do is build a team. And whether we win or lose, there I feel like I'm a good man manager. I can manage players to go and perform. And they might not, we still might not win, we still might, not quite get there, but I'd be very, very disappointed if any of my teams were lacking heart where they went on the pitch, when I've got the opportunity to do it properly.
Yeah.
And that was one thing with the Philippines. I'm not Jose Mourinho. The miracle of Hanway was a miracle because of what the players did. Not, I just watched. I watched and clapped when they scored. My job's done before they go on the pitch. They do the work. I prepare them, they go and do the work, and I stand and applaud when they do it well. And that's what I do. That's the job. So, like I say, it was perfect. It was genuinely perfect. And the fact that it gives me chills to think about the deep impact that it does. And I haven't stopped talking about it for 10 years, and I don't think I ever will. I was at dinner, and I remember being in Manila, and I was at dinner with a group of friends, and a guy walked over to me, and he brought his son over, and I got really emotional at the time, because he said, "You are Coach Simon," and I don't get recognised that much in Manila, not often. Even with Morocco, it's not the same as here. But he came over, and he just said, "I wanted to shake your hand and thank you, because my son loves football, and he loves football because of you." And I'm like, "Oh my God, can you?" I'm sitting here with friends, and I'm tearing up at the table, and I'm shaking the kids' hands.
Wow.
And this little 6-year-old's coming up and giving me a high five, and he's got an Azkals shirt on, and it's just those little things that I will be, I'll be on my deathbed, and I will be forever proud of everything that I was involved in for that short space of time with the Azkals, and just to be involved, just to do my little bit, and then watch those Warriors go out and do what they did was incredible.
Thank you so much for that, Coach. Tita Sai, I left a message on your resume. I want you to be the one to ask
Yeah.
probably this last question that we do have for Coach Sam. I mean, I want to go on for like 2 or 3 more hours, but we got our own lives to live on, and
Yeah, me
I
too.
mean, yeah. So, go ahead, Tita Sai. You can go ahead and ask this last question to Coach Simon.
Before I ask that question, I was actually jotting down a new question.
Go on. If you have two more questions, that's if you have one
Yeah,
there on your notes, that's fine. Then you can just ask the last one that I sent to you.
yeah, that will be the last question. But yeah, Coach Simon, I just needed to ask you this one.
Sure.
10 years on,
Mhm.
most of the players on that Miracle and Hanoi team are successful in their own way. Like Neil Etheridge in the EPL, Chris, Chifi, Rob doing their coaching duties, Anton founding a new league, and now a team owner, and so on and so forth. Phil Young husband retiring with 50 international goals at that thought. How proud of you of these players and their achievements at the moment.
I'm um, I'll be forever proud, forever proud. Like I say, I can't attribute it. I don't feel like I'm responsible for it all. I feel I was responsible for getting that group of players together, motivating them, and sending them on the pitch. I didn't know a lot about them before I met them. I didn't. I was only in the job, a couple of about a month, 2 months before we got to the group stages. So it's not like I had so long to work with them and got to know them and their ins and outs. But what's interesting is now there is a common connection whenever we see each other. From last time I saw Haner, he just came up to me and gave me a big hug. Now Haner's a military man, I doubt he hugs too many people, but he just came and gave me a big hug. And he messaged me the other day. I messaged him on Facebook, and he messaged me back, a nice little message. And there is that common recognition of we were part of that group. We were in that first wave of Azkals, as they're now called. Um, and I know James feels it. James gets emotional about it. Neil feels it all the time. I still give Neil, I still send him stupid messages and make fun of him when he makes mistakes and things like that. But when Neil was looking to move to Fulham, he was messaging me and asked when he was going to move from Fulham and go drop down the leagues. He was saying, Coach, what should I do? What do you think it's a good move? He was messaging me while I was still in Vietnam or wherever I was. And that's a sign that you've created something. You've created a bond. And I think that there is a common bond between every single member of that team and staff who were involved in that time because of what we went through. And I think I'm very proud of everyone that's gone on to do their bit for football. And I'm still pushing for football. Anton is still pushing every day to make football better. And what I like about Anton is, there's a little bit of arrogance there that he's not prepared to back down. He'll just fight with anyone, and he'll call them out on it as well. He doesn't really mind, which sometimes needs to happen. Phil, I'm sure will get back involved eventually. He's looking after himself for a while. It's not been easy for Phil. You wouldn't. His personal life has been quite difficult for him. So the fact that he's got a little one now and he's married and he's, that's an incredible achievement. You go through that squad, and it's not just all right. Neil's played in the Premier League. That's fantastic, but everyone has been successful since that point. And it's great to see. It's great to see Chris back involved with the national team. I hope eventually he will get that job at some point. I'm sure he will. Would be great to see him in that job. That would be a great story as well. So it's just a lovely, lovely story, and I'm incredibly proud to have been a part of it, and I will be incredibly proud of those players from forever on. Pretty much it.
Okay, so I have the honor of asking the last question.
Go for it. Make it a good one.
Let
Of course
me
it is.
let me
Okay, perfect.
hold on to where
Let
I'm
me just
sitting
get
at right now.
comfortable. Let me just get comfortable. Okay. Hit me with it. Hit me with it.
I
Let's
think
go.
this is gonna be a huge one as well, Tita Sai. Go ahead.
Okay, Coach Simon,
Yeah.
if the opportunity comes knocking again, would you say yes to coaching the Philippines?
My heart would say yes. My head would say no. My heart would say yes, of course. I would run to the airport. But my head would be saying, can you really genuinely believe that you could repeat what you've already done there? And the reality is no, I don't. That's once in a lifetime stuff. I don't think I'll ever repeat that ever again, working till the day I die. The fact that people might want me to come back, or the fact that, eventually I might get the opportunity, who knows? Like I say, there would be a very strong emotional pull to that job. It would be very difficult to say no to. But knowing football as I do now, knowing how difficult it is to repeat success under different circumstances, even now the Azkals is very different from the Azkals we had back then. It'd be very difficult to say no to, but I would be trying to. My head would be telling me to be sensible and switch on, and you've done your bit. I wouldn't want to go back and ruin what is such an incredible achievement and just a fairy tale. I wouldn't want to go back and tarnish that. So I genuinely don't know. I haven't got a genuine answer to that. All I can say is my heart would say yes, 100%. My head would have reservations.
Thank you so much for answering that question, Coach.
You're welcome. No problem.
I think that was a really understandable and a logical answer to that difficult question, knowing that, like what you've said, it's a once in a lifetime job to take a country like the Philippines from not being known to having a football team or a national football team in its own country to where it is right now, 10 years on to that miracle in Hanoi, knowing that the people have made a lot of changes, they've made a lot of sacrifices and efforts to get where we are right now, or at least be, stay relevant in terms of the sport here in the country.
Yeah. It's caused me a lot of problems, You may think that it's been a positive, and in certain ways it has been. Yes, I'm still known 10 years on. You're the Philippines coach. Well, I was, but they still know me as the Philippines coach. Wherever I go in Southeast Asia, they'll know me as the Philippines. You were with Philippines. Even guys on the street who, Gojek drivers in Indonesia. Oh, it's Simon McMenemy, that's the Philippines coach. I was just your national team head coach, but you're going to call me the Philippines coach. So wherever I go, I get tagged with that. But the thing was, from a personal point of view, that was my first job in professional football with the Azkals. That was my very, very first professional contract. When your first professional contract changes the landscape of a country, what do you do next? How can you ever meet that bar that you've set yourself? Now Indonesia is expecting me to change the whole landscape of their football, and then if I get another job somewhere, I've got to win this, and it really has set a very high precedent for me whatever job I go into now, because of the success we had and because it was so high profile and so unpredicted. And people don't know the backstory. They just go, oh, much like when it goes bad, they blame the coach. But I must have done something to affect that team, doing as well as they did in 2010. So I carry that around with me all the time. And sometimes that's quite a heavy weight to carry. It really is. And people that don't understand and just go, oh, you did well with them, why can't you come and do well with us? Yeah, it's a different set of circumstances. So it's definitely had an influence on where I go and what I do and how I'm seen and the expectations that people have on me. Fortunately, recently I've been able to win a domestic title as well, which has kind of eased the burden a little bit now.
Yeah.
It's not now just all about, we need you to do what you did with the Azkals just here. Now I've done it with a club team. Now they're going, well, let's do that. Can you do that again? And let's do that with this club. So it's not as bad now, but that was a weight I carried around with me for a long, long time. And as much as it was a positive, it also had a very negative effect in terms of the expectation that came with me then. And it was quite a heavy cross to bear going into new clubs.
Well, I mean, our time spent with you, Coach, on this virtual interview, it was a mix of, just rekindling what happened 10 years ago and then looking forward what's in the future for us, just knowing what we have done before, and also looking into the sad but honest stuff that we have to look into, like what we are experiencing now. So I mean, we thank you so much for joining us tonight. I mean, it was really an honor. This was the first time that I had the opportunity to talk with. I mean, everyone here in this panel. This is the very first time to for us to talk to you, and it's been a pleasure. Anything else that you want to say to probably the Filipino people watching our stream right now, or everyone else who's watching us?
Um, just support. Get out there and support, because football is nothing without support. How many Premier League players are saying that now, that they're struggling because there's no one supporting them? They don't feel like there's anyone watching the game. Football's taken a hit, and it's almost like the case study of the Philippines. Without support, football dies. When stadiums are full, everyone wants a piece of it, and football grows. And I've been lucky enough to use football for my whole life, and I've seen the effect it can have, and for good and for bad. And full stadiums in the Philippines mean more teams, means more interest, means more young players playing it, means more opportunity, means healthier lifestyles, better lifestyles, kids pulling themselves out of difficult situations. You name it, football can do it. So, when there's a group of guys like yourself who have been so influenced by that game back in 2010, I talk about that kid at the table who came up and gave me a high five. You guys are the same. We wouldn't be sitting here now having these conversations. You wouldn't be so enthused about football and so passionate about it and feeling emotional about it had they not done what they've done in 2010. That's the beauty of football. That's what football does. And I just hope that the Philippines can rekindle that, and that can be kind of passed on to generations and come to find out what Azkal Day and the Miracle of Hanoi was all about.
I think that task is already on our shoulders, or everyone else's
Amen.
shoulders right now. Thank you so much, Coach. Before we end the show, Johnny Pampa, anything that you'd like to say, or your plugs and everything? Go ahead.
All right. So again, thank you for Coach Simon for being here with us, and for those who are watching, if you want Formula One updates and international football updates, please follow and watch the What's Up Football and Formula One show. We talk about Champions League, Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, and Bundesliga. So for international football fans, please check up the updates and like that. And also for the motorsport fans, the What's Up Football and Formula One show also does the Formula One and Formula Two updates. So please follow the page if you want more updates regarding international football and anything, especially the Champions League and the Europa League. And and also big shout out to Against the World for those who are watching. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Johnny. Tita Sai, go ahead.
First and foremost, because we have the chance to personally say thank you to Coach Simon McMenemy for changing the landscape of Philippine football. So yeah, thank you so much, Coach, and also for guesting at Eat, Sleep, Read Football. Personally, thank you, because if it wasn't for that 2010 Azkals, I wouldn't be a football fan.
Well,
I
that's
wouldn't
very
be
cool.
out here wearing this jersey.
That's very cool.
Anyway, of course, don't forget to tune in at the Ultimate Fan Hub podcast. We're cooking up some episodes. Just we're just getting the schedules of our future guests. And shout out to Jordan and Jonas, my colleagues at the Ultimate Fan Hub podcast. Again, thank you to all the pamangkikers who tuned in our massive episodes for tonight.
Thank you so much.
Shout out.
Go ahead, Tita.
Shout out
Sorry.
sorry. Shout out to my mom who's at the other room waiting for me to bring her.
Waiting for you to
Sorry.
be
Sorry,
finished.
Sorry, Mom. I talk a lot. Sorry, Mom.
But yeah, she's cool with it, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Tita Sai. Go ahead, Loyola fanboy. Kent, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yep. Yep. Again, my utmost thanks and gratitude to Coach Simon for gracing our show tonight. It was not only fun, but it's also insightful, and I hope all the viewers, our pamangkikers who tuned in, learned a lot about what happened 10 years ago, and would have a lot of insights about how we should carry the torch for Philippine football as fans moving forward. that's the important thing that I have grasped all throughout this episode. And it's a challenge, and we here at the ESBF gang, we're looking forward to see what we can do to further the interest of the people towards Philippine football. With that being said, shout out to Loyola Football Club, especially Coach Roxy Dorlas, Miss
Go
Fish
on,
Manuel.
Rox. Go on, Roxy.
Hope
Love, love Roxy. Love Roxy.
yeah,
Great,
yeah.
great guy.
And I hope you're doing well, and I hope that the PFL comeback will be sooner than later. But for now, wishing you happy holidays right there, and all the kids, all the young players that are being nurtured inside the Loyola Academy. Shout out also to our fellow terrace lads at Ultras Filipinas. You're hoping you're having a very good time. Our fellow lads at Frente Narana, don't worry. As soon as Loyola comes back, we'll also come back. Shout out to our fellow writers as well, Huddle PH. Hopefully, we can more football happenings for the Philippine landscape next year, and we will be here to provide you everything and anything about local football. Would like to greet also my sister, who's but countless times told me to have lunch, but I said no. I have a podcast. So podcast comes first before the dinner. So yeah, and shout out to those other my other friends, especially at MNL 48. Always take care.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Anyone else you want to
Keep
shout
up
out
for
to?
the win. All good, puppy. All good.
Yeah.
All right. So again, in behalf of everyone here in our show, Coach, we would like to thank you for our friends who weren't able to join us, to Glenn Casas, to David Villagracia, and everyone else in the ESBF gang that weren't able to join us. Hopefully, on our next episodes, you can join us as well. Keep your families and yourselves safe. Also, you've already mentioned this, Johnny, but big shout out to Against the World, to our fans, and to to the followers of the Against the World clothing line from Davao City. We're cooking up something, so we're cooking up a collaboration with them. So we look forward to bringing that collaboration to you guys. Also, shout out to everyone who watched this episode. And yeah, I think that's basically it for me. Oh, I almost forgot our graphics guy, Saya Graphics, Saya Rudao, Saya Graphics. Thank you so much for the wonderful deck that you have provided me for tonight's show. So yeah, and last but not the least, thank you again, Coach Simon, for making the time and joining us to discuss the
Totally
miracle
my
in
pleasure,
Hanoi.
guys. Totally
And
my pleasure.
that's fine. And also, we take that as a challenge. When you said that
Good.
it's already up to us to pass it on to the future generations. What happened back in 2010, because that's what really changed the landscape of Philippine football. So yeah, that's a wrap for our show for tonight. Again, thank you so much to everyone who watched it, and we'll see you guys soon. Thank you. Bye bye.
This is why we eat, sleep, and breathe football.